Thank you, Lindsay and Tracy and Meadowlark, for putting this evening together in the honor of reading. I can't say enough about how amazing you've been to work with and the thrill it has been to have my book published with Meadowlark, and I hope that it only continues to grow. It's an amazing press. I'm going to read from Warble tonight, which I have here. I'll probably read 4 poems. The book is in 3 sections. The middle section deals a lot with my father dying and the time I spent with him in hospice. And then the first section and the third section are framed around that experience. I thought I would read a poem that actually references reality television. There are several poems in the book that do that, and I think that one reason I rely so heavily on that is because when my dad was dying and after he passed away, I turned a lot to just the television on in the background to kind of deal with that loss. So Love is Blind and Love Island were 2 shows that I watched a lot of. This first poem in this section, the first section I'm going to read, is called Pod, and it features an epigraph from Paul in Love is Blind season 4, who said, "It's as if placing a boundary in between people has actually removed a boundary." Very insightful. Pod. Love is patient, love is kind, of like when an aquarium octopus escapes to find another octopus obscuring the drain pipe. My grandfather, who glued his eye to the circus tent's striped canvas to view a woman removing her stockings, was more smitten with the lines of limitation. Any relatively narrow causeway, and my imagination swells like the waves the concrete keeps me from. The clasp of my bra has been both polished door knocker and impediment to horn-mad fingers. I have watched an invisible wall become more believable when the mime took advantage of a fixed point, keeping one hand motionless, unlike the full body swaying that happens in slow dancing. This was years ago on the streets of Paris. If God were to rend my veil, well, I would probably hate it. And I'll read another poem from, thank you, the first section, which is one of the poems that I think I wrote to kind of lend an atmosphere to the book around our current political climate and anxiety, and particularly for me around gun violence, having an elementary school age child. This poem is called G Day. Today is G Day, my son says to me, the morning after another school shooting he doesn't yet know about. The alphabet countdown has begun to mark the passage of time between now and the final class when second graders stream out the guarded door and into summer. We're learning about grapes, he says, and as I unknot his hair, hands shaking, I picture the kids in a crisscross circle, eyes closed, each biting excitedly into a succulent spherical berry before giving language to the pop, sweet and tart or like jelly. And there will certainly be a child who thinks but maybe doesn't say the shape of a bullet, the way his teacher will keep her terror private, the way I hear in my head, G is for gun. I wish I didn't have to write that poem. Here we are. The middle section of the book I structured around my dad going through hospice and passing away, and I wanted it to be a 28 poem sequence that starts with 14-line sonnet, and then in each subsequent poem goes down 1 line, so it goes 14, 13, 12, and then goes down to 1 line, and then goes back up again to a sonnet at the end of the section. So I'm going to read the 13-line poem Guy, which has very, very long lineation, which is why the book is this beautiful little squat, lovely poetry manuscript. Okay, this is called Guy because my father's name was Guy. You had a name that could have meant anyone, yet you were here and particular. Layered Vidalia onions you peeled and ate like apples, faint freckles on your belly, needles of Vidaza inserted between them. After we saw March of the Penguins, you signed your emails, Father Penguin, attached pics of squirrels and ticks and roof refurbishment, guns hidden in the ceiling, password to your tablet, my birthday. Why did you over photo document? Chair56.jpg. Some nights I fix a drink and unsubscribe you from far right propaganda, struggle with how to reconcile the whole with its parts. And Indian princesses, we were bald eagle and white dove. How do I separate love from what is reprehensible? In 1975, you hunted a bear while camping along the Whitewater River, hunkered down in the undercut of a logging road to avoid a twister. Affable winker. Toward the end, no longer accepted Skyrim missions, just explored and unlocked the map, maybe the best approximation of what was my confounding life's trajectory. You loved the frenetic Carolina Chickadee, Ralph and Carter Stanley, La Traviata, every opera, Fish, shot coot from a keel, defended my blog against a vitriolic uncle, played guitar, wore a hat, smoked for 5 years before quitting atop some waterfall, snap, just like that. And I'll read a poem from the third section of the book, which is called Perimenopause. It's one of the prose poems in the book. Perimenopause. I don't want to have another child, yet neither do I want the possibility of having another taken from me. In Persian mythology, a peri is a winged spirit known for her beauty, at times mischievous, at times benevolent. If I listen to my body, I can hear hundreds of moody wings beating inside of me on iterations of the shoulders of the women I have been and even the babies I have lost. My first period started in a planetarium. The distance from the Earth to the sun is an astronomical unit, and I sometimes think of the growing space between each phase this way. The period before my father died happened unexpectedly in the hospital. His night nurse handed me a maternity pad. I put it on and thought about those initial days after giving birth, how a clot the size of a grapefruit was cause for concern, but a tomato wasn't. I had already stained the chair I was curled up on, so I got a wet paper towel and wiped it down in view of the stars visible from the window my father was no longer aware of. His delirium meant we weren't alone, that spirits surrounded us. We talked to them together, and as I bled, I told him what I remembered of the planet Mercury, named after the winged god, how it moves quickly around the sun but spins slowly on its axis. Life is like that. The day is long and the years short, or the days short and the years long, depending on the exact moment you ask someone. I think I'm actually going to read one more. I'm going to read Warble, which is the title of the book. That sort of makes sense to do. And that's also in the last section. Warble. The way to play the theremin is to never touch the instrument. Interference causes melody. Even swaying can alter the electromagnetic field. Our house shakes from the vibration of trucks on the deteriorating highway. I mostly feel these tremors in the bedroom when I set out to write, distracted by the sound of a circular saw or the shadows made by moving hands in videos of theremin players. I prefer not knowing what will come next. Like how a curved mirror gathers and concentrates light, the distance between what I intend to write and what I actually do is a kind of confirmation and faith in prospect and span in air. Thank you so much.
That was really beautiful. I love hearing you read. It's been so much fun to work this year on the book with you. And like we were saying earlier, we can't believe it's been a year already.
Oh.
Yeah. So our next reader will be our finalist from last year, Ruth Bardon, with her collection Witness. Ruth Bardon grew up in Highland Park, New Jersey, and lived in a number of Midwestern cities before firmly settling in Durham, North Carolina. She received an MFA from the Iowa Writers Workshop in 1982 and a PhD in English from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill in 1995. Her poems have appeared in the Southern Review, Boulevard, the Cincinnati Review, New Ohio Review, Salamander, and other journals. She is the author of 2 chapbooks, Demon Barber, published by Main Street Rag in 2020, and What You Wish For by Finishing Line Press in 2023. She is also the author of select short stories of William Dean Howells, published by Ohio University Press in 1997. Ruth, thank you so much for joining us.
So thank you, Becca, for reading. I really enjoyed that. Thanks for inviting me to read. I'm very happy to be part of the Meadowlark community, and I'm very happy to be part of this event. And I have to echo Becca that Meadowlark is fabulous. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better experience. I'm going to read 7 poems. They're mostly short from my Meadowlark book. I read 4 of these when I had my book launch, so I hope that some of you don't mind hearing some of the same poems again. And I wasn't going to talk about the format of the book, but it's in 3 parts, kind of chronologically, and I'm going to read these poems in chronological order. So the first poem is a poem about childhood, and it came from a summer where when I lived someplace that had a swimming pool with colored lights under the water that, shone into the water. So this poem is called Swimming Pool. Swimming pool. Underwater, in the sky blue room of its walls, the chalk white of its floor, we couldn't stop swimming through the beams of light, pink, tangerine, yellow, streaming like sunshine from smooth glass spheres, believing we could feel the difference in the colors, believing they'd become a part of us. We'd carry that miracle after we emerged, an amulet of ice staying hard in the sun. When I see the shadow of glass, of steam, or the sun shines off the red vase in the window, I think of how strong I was, slicing through a world where I couldn't even breathe and claiming it as mine. The next poem is also based on a childhood memory, and this poem is called Apple. I told it as a funny story, how every day my father went to work with an apple in his lunch, and how he brought it home every evening, and how my mother put it in his lunch the next day, 1 apple traveling back and forth 5 times each week. Every Friday, the carrying apple being discarded. Every Monday, a new one taking its place. Now, I think of its redness, its roundness, and what was packed into it. Now I think of the choice every day to bring it back. Years after he died, she had his ashes moved to the Jewish cemetery, breaking all sorts of rules because she'd returned to her religion. He'd have hated this, but I imagine that he'd have stayed silent, carrying his love and resignation back and forth between worlds, unable to deny her this hope and unwilling, after all, to spare her from it. And the next poem is a kind of a tongue-in-cheek poem, and it's from the point of view, I guess it was my point of view, of a very naive teenage girl. And this poem is called The Birth of the Artist. The thick smoke on the battlefield made it hard to see exactly what was happening on stage. The director's idea, planned and carried out by 3 of the AP chemistry students. Bemused by the chance to be part of a play, they'd thrown themselves into this business with gusto. Off stage, I was in love with the acrid smell of gunpowder, with Appalachian spring trickling out of the speakers, with knowing the tableau the 2 actors formed under the spotlight was called Pietà, something vaguely Italian that made the audience quiet. The senior girl closing her eyes as she lowered her head and stayed still, the freshman boy letting her hold him as the notes rose together alone and then joined at the top, almost crying, then the strobe light that made me shiver and the wonderful swirl of the smoke. Oh, beauty, oh, art, science and death, music and light. Well, I clutched my props, waiting in the wings, eager to drop them into anyone's open hands. And the next poem is called Typography, and it helps to understand that some nursery schools and kindergartens have a way of monitoring the children's behavior by awarding a green light to a well-behaved child and a yellow light to a child who's acting up and a red light to a child who's really in trouble. So that might help. So this poem is called Typography. I was taught that using boldface and underline, italics, reveals to readers the weakness of your prose. Emotion is expressed by taking the time to find the perfect word, though I find this hard to do. At times, I wonder how it would feel to use capital letters or exclamation marks, to curse, perhaps to punch someone hard, like the girl in the nursery school who up till then had earned only green or yellow lights, happily explaining that she wanted to know how red would feel. The next poem that I'm going to read is the title poem, and the book is called Witness. And the poem is called Witness. I ran into Nick on the library steps after class years ago, and when he asked where I'd been, I explained about the miscarriage. What I remember is the look he gave me when I said that nothing that bad had ever happened to me. He looked at me, but I knew he was seeing something else, someone else, and I was ashamed. Today, taking a walk, I thought of him, almost wanting him to know how things turned out. But I know it's better to leave him a witness to something that pure, to someone who lived for a while, not knowing that the first death is always the first of many, a beginning, not an end. And the next poem is about aging, and it's called How It Starts. It starts when you enter a room and your children are talking about you, calling you she, not mom. For once you hear them speaking in their native tongue. All this time they've been translating. They hum melodies you've never heard and mouth the lyrics, and their hands form complicated patterns in the air. It ends with them whispering in a hallway, slowly circling and then landing. They come in and touch your arm as if you are a bubble or a baby or a flower. Then they fly, their small shadows flitting from wall to wall to wall. And the final poem I want to read is a little bit longer than the rest, but none of them are really long. And this poem is called Eclipse, if I can find it. Sorry. There. And I wrote this poem after the 2017 total solar eclipse. And it's a poem about remembering and not remembering. Eclipse. Right after the eclipse, we all were crazy to see another one, planning Cleveland in 7 years, Iceland in 9, hanging on to that moment when the sun had disappeared, leaving us stranded in the universe with no control over our bodies, which were pulled by the sight like puppets, made to yell and point and cry. But then we forgot it, went ahead in our small, predictable circles. Though for years I had remembered an opioid, no longer in use, that I tasted for 10 minutes when my first child was born, had craved it and felt disappointed when my second came too fast for any drug at all, had remembered that dreamy joy after I'd erased everything else about how labor felt, how I thought, oh yes, this, as it started up again, and how it disappeared, eclipsed by the baby himself. So little remains in my memory of all those sleepless nights, the heavy days that followed, just pale scraps and slivers. And when I sometimes try to hear again the voices of the people that I've lost, the longer that they're gone, the more I fail, hearing instead their words in my own voice, although I still retain the way I felt hearing their voices then, like a vibration continuing after the bell is stifled. The obscure mathematics of adding and subtracting pain and pleasure leave me wondering what I'll recall from any time of grief or time of joy. Looking now at the pictures we all took of shimmering crescents underneath the trees, the leaves transformed into a row of pinholes that threw the alien sun down at our feet, the most unearthly thing we'd ever seen until we raised our faces to the sky. Thank you very much for letting me read.
Tracy, would you like to reveal our guest judge, please?
Absolutely. We were honored this year to have Jose Faus judge the 2025 Birdy Poetry Prize. Jose is a writer, performer, visual artist, and independent teacher mentor with an interest in the role of artist as creative catalyst for community building. He is a founder of the Latino Writers Collective and sits on the boards of the UMKC Friends of the Library. He also sits on the boards of the Latino Writers Collective and the Charlotte Street Foundation. His chapbook, This Town Like That, was released by Spartan Press. His first book of poetry, The Life and Times of Jose Calderon, was published by West 39 Press. Jose really wanted to be with us this evening, but he had another event and he could not be in two places at once. But he did record a little video for us, right? Or I guess we're going to see that later. I'll go ahead and say just a little bit about being a semi-finalist for the Birdy Poetry Prize. This contest has grown every year. The process of reading all of the poetry manuscripts is just getting bigger and bigger, and it's wonderful. And if you've been paying attention, you'll notice that we have varying numbers of semi-finalists each year. And just basically, in order to be a semi-finalist, of our pool of readers, you have to be selected by multiple readers to hit the semi-finalist list. So it is no small feat to get on this list. We had, I can't even tell you how many entries we had this year. Do you remember, Lindsay?
154, I believe.
Yeah, so a lot of poetry. So if you made the semi-finalist list, congratulations. They were all wonderful manuscripts. I took the time to read all of them this year. And I'm just going to list I'm going to read the names to you and the manuscript names. So congratulations to, we had Angela Kelly from Spartanburg, South Carolina, with Sometimes the Ghost. We had James Cooper from Leavenworth, Kansas, for Finding Faith on K5. Nancy Keating from Babylon, New York, with Grammars. We had Karen Karpowicz from New York, New York, with Small Acts. We had Tracy Knapp from San Leandro, California, with Swerve. We had Hunt Hawkins from Temple Terrace, Florida, with Evening Houses. We had Patricia Davis Muffet from Rockville, Maryland, with Premature Elegy. We had David James from Linden, Michigan, with Singing Like I Have All the Time. We have Anzie Baird from Buffalo, New York, A Gathering of Absence. And we have Julie Ramone from Joplin, Missouri, with Tonsil Stone.
Congratulations.
These are our semifinalists for 2025. And our finalist. Our finalists this year, we have Tess Berry from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, with The Marvelous Reel. We have Huascar Medina from Topeka, Kansas, with Protest as Love Poem. And we have Christina Frei from Montreal, Quebec, with Family Genus Species.
Congratulations, everyone. Thank you, Tracy. To celebrate our finalists, we were originally going to have two of them read, but unfortunately, Tess Berry will not be able to join us tonight. but we will have Huascar Medina read for us. Huascar is a father, poet, and editor living artfully in Topeka, Kansas. He's the author of 2 books of poetry, How to Hang the Moon and Un Mango Grows in Kansas. He served as Poet Laureate of Kansas from 2019 to 2022. Thank you for joining us, Huascar.
Thank you, Lindsay. And congratulations to everyone, semi-finalists, finalists, and the past winners and the winner to be announced shortly. I'll be reading a couple poems here, and I'm really excited to be in company with other poets today and everyone in the room. Thank you so much. This poem is called In the Red, and I wrote it after hearing an older gentleman talk about losing his pension. You've worked so hard from the farm to the factory, in the county and the city. You've always paid on time for peace of mind, your body as collateral, so you may rest and retire when the time came, knowing you'll be fine. But somehow you still owe today, and you are all out of body. This next poem is called Captain America Eats Cake on the 4th of July. And just to be clear, Captain America's birthday is not on the 4th of July. So just want to make sure people know that. Today is not your birthday, Steve. But if you're invited to a patriotic party, offer to blow out the red, white, and blue sparkling candles, screaming like fuses. Make a wish on behalf of Old Glory so it isn't replaced with an appeal to heaven so that we can make it to a quarter millennium. Try saving America. That would be super. That would be great. This next poem is interesting. I added an epigraph after hearing that a French politician in the European Parliament wanted the Statue of Liberty back. So I decided I'd quote the gentleman, and his name is Raphael Glucksmann. We gave it to you as a gift, but apparently you despise her. And this poem is titled, The Statue of Liberty is Not a Trophy. Even goddesses have their limits. I wouldn't be surprised if Lady Liberty walked away sick and tired of watching us mistreat our tired and poor. Her countenance, stoic detachment, her patinated flesh, a pale dollar bill green. She was brought here across an ocean with skin tone the color of copper. We continue watching a young brown immigrant woman standing alone, welcoming others while she weathers away. This next poem is called Los Otros, Kansas. Los Otros is an imaginary place where other people like myself seem to live. There's many places like Los Otros in many states. They all have similarities. And it starts with a line from the poem My President by Denez Smith. Show me to our nation, my only border is my body. Los Otros is a neon brown floating city, a mobile border town with no jurisdiction in perpetual redistricting. We only acknowledge its existence in the breaking news during election cycles. Every state has a Los Otros, and many cities have dedicated neighborhoods and streets to the citizens of Los Otros, for better or worse. Los Otros is treated like a faraway place with no municipality. All locals are foreigners. The red lines around their cities, drawn out in quicksand, constantly coiling around its inhabitants. The city of Los Otros has been known to disappear overnight under the guise of economic development and urban renewal, swallowed up whole by gentrificator and gerrymander, a two-headed python with no end, feasting on our plight. Here, the cities of Los Otros had nicknames like the Bottoms and La Yarda. If you've ever wondered If you have ever lived in Los Otros, you are not from Los Otros. If your small town is dying, you have already been moved to Los Otros. And I'll read a few short poems and then we'll move on. This one is a response to a social media ad of Basquiat's artwork on purses that were 70% off in a clearance sale. It really bothered me because I love art and artists. So this is a Basquiat as Coach bag. The word famous and a symbolic crown are branded into animal flesh, paint smeared around the edges. When Warhol became Jean-Michel's so-called benefactor, Jean-Michel was instantly commodified, an artist imprisoned by mass production, sold for next to nothing, and then priceless. Death is an act of parody for select artists. Finally, success, then suddenly death, or death and then success, or just death and anonymity, same thing. A young artist's life spent in hardship, waiting to be discovered and revered, just to be bought up as an empty purse in the clearance section of a high-end boutique for baggage. If Jean-Michel were resurrected and strolled into a Saks Fifth Avenue, I wonder how he'd be treated. Maybe they'd follow him around, worried about theft, and ask him, "Can I help you?" "Where do you keep the souls?" he'd ask. "We don't have those here." The last two poems are short. This one is called Terminals. And I wrote it after taking a family member battling cancer to take care of their parent who was dying of cancer. This poem is Terminals. These days, when I hear the word terminal, I think of cancer. I see departures, not of planes, but of people. I imagine caskets lined up in a hallway, the length of a runway, filled with bodies waiting to ascend as I'm waving my arms like an aircraft marshal. This final poem is for a dear friend that we recently lost by the name of Rhonda Miller, a poet, someone that I cared about deeply. So this is for Rhonda. This will be my last poem. Under that night sky, in that first hour, I will speak of her as celestial, point up in awe of the next blood moon and say, you see, even in the deepest darkness, she and this universe prefer a warmer shade of red when performing miracles. Thank you.
Wow, Oscar, thank you so much. That was beautiful. Our winner is Catherine Anderson from Kansas City, Missouri, with her manuscript Afloat. Congratulations, Catherine.
Thank you.
Okay, so this was pretty fun. With Catherine being in such close proximity, we were able to get coffee earlier in the week, and I was able to reveal to her, well, I was able to parent trap her and Jose to reveal to one another that they were the judge and the winner. And because Jose cannot be here tonight, we recorded a video of him saying some really kind words about the manuscript. So I am going to play that for you, and then we will have Catherine read.
All righty. Well, I wanted to say thank you so much to Meadowlark Press for inviting me to be a judge in this contest. And I'll just say up front that I was really impressed by the work that I read. But there was one manuscript that just really jumped out at me. it just kept coming back to me. And I was so happy that it's somebody that I've known for a long time here in Kansas City, and I want her to just say some few words. My name is Jose Faus.
I'm Catherine Anderson, and I am just so thrilled and excited about this publication. And thank you, Jose. Thank you, Meadowlark, Lindsay, and Tracy. It's just really great.
And I am so glad we both now have become part of the Meadowlark family. We have been told in no uncertain terms, but it's a joy to be a part of this family. Beautiful work. Thank you so much.
Wasn't that lovely? All right. Congratulations, Catherine. I'm going to tell you all a little bit about Catherine. So, Catherine Anderson has published 4 collections of poetry, including Everyone I Love Immortal, published by Woodley Press, Woman with a Gambling Mania, published by Mayapple Press, The Work of Hands by Perugia Press, and In the Mother Tongue, published with Alice James Books. In 2022, a memoir about her dear late brother who had nonverbal autism, My Brother Speaks in Dreams of Family, Beauty, and Belonging, was published by Wising Up Press. She has been recognized for her poetry by the Massachusetts Artists Foundation, Southern Humanities Review, I-70 Review, and Crab Orchard Review. Over the years, poems have appeared in Harvard Review and Dunes Review, among many others. She lives in Kansas City, where she has worked for over 20 years assisting new immigrants and refugees to become skilled interpreters. Please join me in congratulating and welcoming Catherine Anderson.
Thank you so much. This is very exciting. It's wonderful to be hearing all the terrific poets, Huascar and Becca and Ruth. It's just been a real treat to sit down and listen. I have to thank again, and I tell Lindsay I can't thank you enough, Tracy as well, for choosing this manuscript. I think of it as a manuscript right now. You know, we know it'll be a book, but in my head, it's still a manuscript. One thing dedication is really to the poets, the makers, and the healers of the world, the ones I've known very closely, and I include activists, artists, musicians, teachers, those folks doing that work that's really hidden and unseen, but that keeps the spirit moving. So I think all of us are participating in that way. Another thread that kind of has gone through the manuscript are quotations from Muriel Rukeyser, the wonderful poet and activist. And there's one quotation from a poem of hers, and she says, "I lived in the first century of world wars. Most mornings I would be more or less insane." And I think many of us are waking up feeling that way too right now, a bit insane. But Muriel didn't let that deter her. She, got up and protested, wrote beautiful poetry, movie scripts, novels. I mean, she was just a fountainhead of creativity and activism. So I have been thinking the last year especially about her work and her heart and spirit. With that in mind, I have about, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 poems to read. We'll see how the time goes. The first 3 are kind of, again, about ordinary people living their lives. This first one is the title poem, Afloat. I'll just set it up for you a little bit. Simply, it's about 2 people, intimates, talking to each other, perhaps, stretching out in bed. So here we go. Afloat. Easy to imagine the one you love as a child. Flushed skin, bright hair, so like water running through your fingers. Eyes agleam in their glance toward you. This lover has your full attention. The story about to begin. Your hand tracing the forehead, the soft plum of a cheek. The beloved known only as the beloved is known. After the pond, the box turtle, those guys, your lover's eyes settle on a bedroom window frame, a smudge on the ceiling, the eyes of a child at rest within the story, the long exhaled breath of it. The story will continue, but now a breath it must take. Your lover's mind floating on its back in the pond, your lover silent for a moment, arms spread wide like a T, attempting the back float, the technique that could save a life. What every child learns first, reverent in the positioning, face up, ears and hair submerged in small tides of the water, the swimmer taking careful breaths with you, the spotter and listener. The one you love rests on the water skin, eyes shut, then open, your child, the child you see in that face, your lover who will never drown. And this next one is called Spring because it's spring. My black jeans off, I'm sitting in one of those white plastic chairs that cradles your hind end like a sugar scoop. My thighs covered by a piece of old brocade the tailor passed to me as he turned away with my chalk-marked skirt billowing gardenias, the one that cuffs the back of my calves in a breeze, but now lies resplendent on the ironing board under a tailor's hand as he pushes aside a pincushion the size of an orange and lifts one of two irons next to a pair of metal shears. The moment I fear a water bottle will topple because a one-eyed calico cat, whose name I know to be Agnes, happens to walk between the water and the scissors just before the final press of the newly hemmed skirt of petals and stems, the one I anticipate skimming not my calves, but a little shorter to crest the top of the knees once the alteration is complete, the second day of April in the year of our Lord, 2022, when I look past the rose calendar still showing the month of March in the black and white photograph of a Shetland pony and a bowler hat and wonder how long beauty will last in the world, not knowing the answer, but just thinking of my skirt, how soon I'll put it on and twirl a little for the final measure, then wear it home instead of my jeans. This next poem is about a bell ringer, and I've described what it's like to be a bell ringer. If I've gotten some of the details wrong, it's my fault, not the bell ringer who told me this. Anyway, it's called Heard on the Street. My friend, the bell ringer, climbs up to the small belfry of St. John's, overlooking the square. The spiral stairs ascending, descending, like the riddle he bellows down the stairwell. What goes up and down all day without moving? The rock pigeons who hear him don't budge from their roost on the ledge. At the top, it's possible to see new buds on the elms, and between the branches, a squirrel's nest. The sky, a blue plum this morning. The bell ringer and I haven't spoken in years. He takes off his belt to replace for a moment the worn rope of the tenor bell. Not to lose his pants, he stops to hitch up the waistband to his girth. To sing when no one listens is an act of grace. He reaches for the end of the tufted rope, midway up what bell ringers call the sally, where he makes a loop knot. This is how he attaches the belt, now ready to sing the notes to the tune of Love Me Tender, Love Me True, as if it were a hymn, and those of us walking the square in love with something we never knew. I have three poems from a long sequence I've written about touching on the lives of immigrants and refugees. I worked at Jewish Vocational Service for over 20 years in interpreting services, as Lindsay told you. And before that, I worked in Boston for another 20 years involved with immigrants in one way or another as a journalist and a teacher and rights activist. So this kind of is, these are a little bit of a composite of different stories. This one's called The Letter B, pronounced at the end of the word bomb. a plosive sound he made with his lips, pushed together and then pulled apart, finished with a barely audible puff, quick into our conversation. I wished we could have said more. I wanted to know how they survived, how he covered his small son with the full length of his body. But all I heard when he spoke was that slight sound erupting again, like the first time decades ago I heard someone describe a different place, another war, those persistent days not knowing when it would stop. You can hear me okay, is that right? Okay, good. This next one too also takes on how language is heard by someone new to speaking English. The word ache with its own sadness. Once a rhyme with the word match in Middle English, that soft ch at the end again, hovering like a touch. Through the ages of English, the word also meant a longing after loss, the remainder of pain. In the plural, you can imagine multiple losses, a home, a country, a family. You hear a word that comes close to the sound of ashes, yet the E always silent because aches are imperceptible to the one sitting beside the other who yearns in daylight, who hesitates to speak among strangers. And this poem actually directly refers to the office I worked in. I really was in the background. The immigration counselors and lawyers were doing, the heavy lifting. I was providing interpreters for those interactions. This poem is called The Weight of Light. The immigration counselor has just read a post about the asylum judge who had to deny the man with a paralyzed leg and 6 children. She's learned about the interpreter's parched throat rendered voiceless the day of the hearing, not from shock, but from stiff air deadening the courtroom. Counselors are given little time, but she would like to stop a moment, sit back from her screen, and slowly ask these questions to anyone listening. What is the weight of light? Does it fall like gravity or drop like mercy from heaven to the place beneath? A chattering boy in a bright amber cap waits with his mother in a room of mops and boxes. Everyone who comes through these doors has crossed a wilderness somewhere on earth to get here. This morning, each desk in the office heavy with paper, and through the window blinds, small blades of scattered, fractured light. A water bottle rolls across the floor, a giggle from the little boy who watches the doors and windows, yet may never remember the woman he will soon meet, the sound of her voice, his mother's anxious lilt. It's National Poetry Month. Isn't that terrific? I think, every month is Poetry Month, right? But I just love this month. So I have 2 poems about 2 different poets. This one is Sylvia Plath in the Night Realm. A few ways we could understand her. Think how she just missed Dylan Thomas, launched straight off to the White Horse Tavern after the end of his reading. In her lucent eye, she saw them both raise a foamy glass to the muse of fracture and revolt. How to fire it, how to keep it, she'd asked the poet. Once she caught up with him, blocks ahead, in his canter through the village. Their dialogue, in her mind, straight up, swift, sprung by chance on the street. The 2 whispering their griefs, not as lovers, but as passing gods of the night realm. Or remember how hot it was that summer in Manhattan, the end of her apprenticeship and its bridled fissure of art from life. Remember the hotel rooftop where everything changed. She peeled off the tight lingerie and silk hose under her skirt and threw it all to the muggy wind. This next one. For Allen Ginsberg's mother, Naomi, who smiled to the moon, her 6 dark hairs on the wen of her breast, the pink nightgown she wore in the Bronx, her lentil soup made for God in his sadness. A woman who conceived her son in a flash of light, so minute, all the hills echoed, as the universe continued its brilliance and despair, a sharp bolt lost to a hymn. For the teenage Allen, who stayed home to save her, for brother Eugene, with tears in his eyes. When we die, we become onions, their mother said. Things lost, past, gone, caw, caw. 17, 18 years old, soon to leave our own mothers, we stood listening one night to Allen chant William Blake outside the Jewish Community Center with its arc-pointed roof raised to the sky. And all the hills echoed, as a balm lifted trees. Oh, strange, Naomi, how to sing the poetic, how to make an edifice of love and press it into permanency. And I have one more of those. Oh, here. 2 more poems to read. This one is actually, I'm thinking of a wonderful painting by the artist Albrecht Dürer many hundreds of years ago. It's called Wing of a Blue Roller. And a blue roller is a European bird, just so you know. So the title is On Viewing Wing of a Blue Roller by Albrecht Dürer. Melancholy elbow, sad shoulder blade, and the artist's study of the bird on the table. From beyond the sea, the bird flew in, a mark of blue edging the greater coverts, feathers painted that rare ultramarine. The longer your eyes wander the painting, the more you see the full body of the bird come alive, its pectoralis muscles wedging a sky the trees make green, a trick the eye teaches the mind to accept. Beauty follows death, a lesson forgotten each time, then remembered, but not completely. I say, as you and I turn the pages of this book about the artist, trace our hands over the bent wing, partial bird swept in blue. And very last poem. Midnight on my birthday. Night has settled, the moon high over the rain gutter. I walk naked through the rooms of my house, feel my collarbone ferried from shoulder to shoulder, my breasts unloosed, brushed by a curtain. Through a window, I watch my neighbor run his pale wolfhound under the streetlights, their 6 legs pumping as they turn a corner, then disappear into the new leaves of the lindens. I stand in this tender skin bestowed by my mother, who smoothed her palms all over it, this woman who carried me from a darkness known only to her into a light both of us could see. Thank you.
Beautiful, Catherine. Beautiful.
Thank you.
That last poem is the poem that really sticks with me every time I think of the collection. I love that. Congratulations. Welcome to the Meadowlark family.
Oh, so delighted.
I just want to thank everyone for coming again. It's so fun to see you all here and to recognize so many faces and to see all our Meadowlarks from all across the country.
Really wonderful poetry like all evening. So thank you for sharing. That was an hour very well spent.
So you had over 150 entries this year, and it continues to grow in popularity, and the places where people are submitting from is growing. How does that feel for Meadowlark?
It feels really good. Tracy?
I never imagined that people from all over the country would know Meadowlark. Can I tell the train story?
Yeah.
So this was 3 years ago. I took the train to Santa Fe. My daughter was working at the Santa Fe Opera that summer. And as I was getting on the train, let's see, how was it? In Santa Fe, I was getting on the train to come home, and they sat me with another person who was riding by himself. And the train was pretty empty, and I was kind of like, oh man, you're making me share a seat when there's plenty of room. But as soon as we sat down, he pulls out a big thick book and starts reading, and I pull out my big thick book and start reading, and I'm like, this will be great. We're both readers, no problem. So we rode all the way to Kansas without hardly saying a word to each other. And about, I don't know, maybe a half hour before we got into Wichita, we both kind of put our books away and we started chatting about what we were reading and stuff. And I can't even remember how it came up, but he told me he was a poet. And I said, well, you should look at the Birdy Poetry Prize. And he said, are you Meadowlark Press? Like he knew me. And it was so exciting. Just this total stranger on a train. And he was submitting to the Birdy Poetry Prize that year. So that was pretty cool.
Really fun story. Christina, who is here, or maybe is she still here? Did she already leave? Oh, there she is.
Yes.
Christina, she is our first, at least we think she is our first international submission.
Wow.
Yeah, do you want to say a few words?
Well, I really enjoyed this evening. It was great hearing, I mean, the poetry was beautiful. And sorry, I declined to read tonight, but yeah, it's been an honor being chosen as a finalist, and yeah, I don't know what else to say, but yeah, Montreal, that's where I am.
And how did you hear about the Birdy Poetry Prize?
I was just online looking for somewhere to submit my manuscript. That's basically, I think it was poets and writers, .com.org. Yeah.
Wonderful. We're glad you found us, and congratulations on being a finalist.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is really cool. We hope it continues to grow, and it's really fun to have poets from coast to coast. And I can't wait to see what happens next. It's always unexpected. Well, thank you everyone so much for coming this evening. Thank you for all of your beautiful words of congratulations in the chat. If anybody needs anything, you know where to find us, meadowlarkbookstore.com. And yeah, we'll see you next year. Thank you. Congratulations, everyone. Have a good night.